So welcome to the audience, to the people who are here already, and hello to the panelists. This is being recorded, so of course people who are missing something, they'll hear afterwards. They can look at it later on the Ifan YouTube channel, and we'll send it out also probably. Andrea, what do you say to people who participated? So, just to set the stage, you're probably aware standards are today the backbone of our modern world, and they provide really the foundation for quality, safety, security, efficiency, interoperability, and so forth. And while women are more than half of the world population, unfortunately, they're generally underrepresented in the standard making process. That's something we need to change, and it's important that it changes because in today's webinar, Authentic Voices, Inspiring Women Through Shared Standardization Journeys, we really try to provide women out there with some tools and insights to be successful in the standards process, to be able to contribute to standards that are relevant to both to men and to women alike. We want to be able to make a real difference, have them overcome hurdles and benefit from the global networking opportunities that are there for the take for anybody who participates in the global standards arena or in the regional standards arena. Now, I have the big pleasure to welcome 4 women who have significantly contributed over the years to build standards that help, on the one side, enable innovation, economic development, and which generally provide the foundation for safety, security, and the well-being of people and of the environment. And so over the coming hour, we want to share tips and insights that have allowed them to make a difference in the standards making process, and which have also allowed them to gain the recognition by the teams in which they participate in. Now, why does it matter that women participate? And I've encountered quite a number of times experts, especially in technical areas, not fully understanding why standards need to be inclusive. Well, women are physically, cognitively, biologically quite different from men. We're not just smaller and lighter. And without being exhaustive, women have less muscle mass. We have lower grip strength, which can, of course, play a role when we operate machinery, for example. We have a higher percentage of body fat, which can have an impact, for example, when we touch electricity. We have thinner skin. So if you touch an oven, we're more easy to burn. We have a lower center of gravity, and when we are pregnant, our organs are completely rearranged and very different from men. We are also smaller and have a lower bone density, smaller lung capacity, lower blood pressure, and a much higher sensitivity to temperature changes, and especially cold, than men. So all of this impacts how we interact with technology and the kind of safety considerations that are needed for us. And when women participate in standardization, in addition to their expertise that they bring to the table, they can also bring some of these perspectives to the table so that the standards ultimately are more useful for a much larger proportion of people, including men and women around the world. So this is just to set the scene. And again, it's a little bit like when you talk about children. Children are not mini adults. They are also very different. And so I think this is something that is a more recent, the discovery of all of this is more recent than one would hope. A little bit of housekeeping. If you have, if the audience, if you have any questions, please ask them to the Q&A and not to the chat, and we will answer questions towards the end of the webinar. And we also add LinkedIn information for each of the participants. So if you have something that you personally, a question that you feel one of the participants can answer, I don't hesitate. They said there would be an agreement to receive your questions like that. So, and I'd like to open the question by asking the panelists, how did you first get involved in standardization work? It's always a tongue breaker. And what was your journey? How did you go into that direction? Let me start maybe with Sonia Bird. I go by family name, alphabetical order. You have achieved a really incredible career at UL. And just let us know, how did you move into standardization?
Sure. Well, Gabriella, first, I want to thank you and thank Ifan for inviting me to participate in this conversation today. I think it's so important that we continue the journey of encouraging people and especially women to get engaged in standardization. And it's an honor, really, to be invited to be here with the other panelists. Um, but as far as my journey, I'm one of the few, I think, who actually got started in standards right out of college. This was a long time ago, I'm 36 years now. In June, will be 36 years with UL, with the UL family now. I'm with UL Standards and Engagement. Um, but I was graduating with an electrical engineering degree and didn't really want to pursue a job in design or in sales. And there was an ad. This is back in the days of the want ads. There was an advertisement. Underwriters Laboratories was looking for an engineer with good communication and writing skills. And it just appealed to me, the thought of mixing engineering, my engineering degree, and communication was just a great combination, and it really appealed to me. I applied for the job. I met with the people at UL and immediately got started in standards. I was a project manager for UL Standards technical committees just right from the beginning. And of course, my role has changed a lot over the years, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that as we continue the conversation today. But it's been a wonderful 35, 36 years already.
Thank you, Sonia. Solange, I believe you also have a very interesting story to share on how you ended up being responsible for environmental standardization at Philips.
Thank you, Gabriella. Really, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's really an honor to be together with such a great women representing standardization. So it's really really a special opportunity. So how did I get into standardization? Before my job now, so I'm doing standardization for something like 10 years now. Before that, I was working with product safety, compliance, and regulatory. And there is nowhere you see more standards than in those areas. And it was quite a heavy job with a lot of issues from the market, product recalls, and a lot of things, and regulatory compliance issues and all that. Quite often not even our issues, but somebody did something wrong with the product, and then you need to prove that was somebody else who to blame, or even counterfeit. We also had many incidents where our products were counterfeited. So it was very interesting to do that, but also a very heavy job. And then after a while, I thought, well, maybe after 10 years doing that, it was time to do something different. And our standardization responsible for environment, and I have a background in chemistry, so there is a link there with environment. He was leaving, he was retiring, and I thought, well, maybe it's something nice to do. And I must say, I was really happy doing that because it didn't feel like job. It really feels for me like a hobby. Like I'm not working. I'm doing something I love to do everything about it. Even sitting and drafting all those very long documents, technical documents, and all the comments and all that. I really enjoy doing that. And this is the way I came in, and probably very likely I'll stay until the moment I cannot do it anymore because I need to retire. But that's my story.
Well, I can hear a lot of enthusiasm, both from Sonia and you, Solange. I think that's also something I have encountered when I met generally experts and women who are doing this, that it seems to be really something where people feel like they're making a difference. Rachel, what was your journey into the world of cybersecurity standardization?
Yes, I'm coming from this field. And I also want to start with thank you for invite me to participate in this very important and inspired session, and to meet all those inspired women here. I'm coming from the engineering area. I've served in different types of engineering roles and responsibilities. And when I was engineering project manager of several of our company development, we've realized that we need to meet one of the cybersecurity standards. So part of being achieve the standards, you need to be there. You need to be in the standardization committee to make sure that you're not being surprised. So basically, this is my starting point. And one of the things that I can share about that at that point that I joined the group, they didn't even know how to pronounce the name of the company. The company is a memory development companies. Probably, I think that most of the audience don't know us, but we are one of the largest memory suppliers in the world. So starting from not knowing how to pronounce the name, after a very short time when I was there, I wasn't only participant, but becoming a major contributor and the leader of part of the activities. So this is how it started and continued.
Mm. Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Rachel. And Sally, you told me that you have had quite a career before you moved into standardization and before you managed committees, first within BSI and ISO. So what made you sort of swing around and move into this world?
Well, I'd say part of it is being a woman. My career was very much interrupted by having children, and I was a single parent, and it became very difficult to continue. I was a journalist before and an artist, so it's all freelance, no regular salary. And of course, I needed to feed my children and make sure they had clothes and a home. So I began looking again for full-time work, but it was very difficult to get back into journalism at the time. The world had changed, and being an artist does not guarantee you will have any money at the end of the month. So I ended up working for the prosecution service in the UK and started standardizing how complex cases were managed. There was no standardization in how these complex cases were being done. And at the time, I had no clue about the world of standards. I'd never heard of ISO 9001, for example, which is what we needed. So I was making something up from scratch, but it was incredibly satisfying. And then a friend of mine said, I found this job that you really need to apply for. This is your job. This suits your skill set. And I looked at the job advert and I literally didn't understand a word. I had no idea what this job was for. I didn't understand it at all. And my friend gave me the best piece of advice I've ever had, probably, which was think like a man and tell them you're great and just apply for it anyway. Because I was going, well, I don't know what that is, so how can I apply for this job? So that's essentially how I got into it. I think as somebody who could write and edit, but also who could deal with people. It's one of the biggest parts of managing committees is dealing with all sorts of different people and really knowing how to listen to them and understand what they're trying to say, even if they can't articulate it very well. So that's how I ended up here. And I have to say, it's the best thing. I thought I'd be at BSI for maybe a couple of years, and it's been well over a decade now that I've been in standards, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
So it looks like somebody else who's very enthusiastic. And that brings me to a question to all of you. What is sort of the most satisfying aspect of participating in the standards work or certification work? Because both of them are two sides of the same coin. Who wants to start?
I'll
think you-
start.
Yes,
I'm happy
Sonia.
to. Yeah. And then I'll let someone start the next one since this will be my second time starting. Well, I'll play fair. So, as I mentioned, I've really always been involved in standards and standards development world. But it became apparent early on the power that exists within a standards committee. People always talk about the power of the pen, right? The power of writing things down. And that's exactly what we do in the standards committees that we're part of. And it's satisfying to me to see how the standards that we generate can have such an impact on society. I think Gabriella, in your opening remarks, you talked about how standards can influence innovation. They really drive innovation. They drive safety. Standards today also drive sustainability and circularity, and they can have such a positive impact on the global fight against climate issues. I know I've been involved in the IEC and at UL Standards and Engagement, dealing with standards addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And all of that is really what is satisfying for me, is seeing such a positive impact we can have on standards. But I'd say even in addition to that, it's satisfying to me to work with such great people around the world. And I talk to my family, and I mentioned how I have just amazing friends everywhere. It's like because of IEC and ISO standards work, because of UL standards work, we getting the opportunity to meet so many people and so many different cultures, people coming from so many different backgrounds. And to me, that's very satisfying too, to be able to build those relationships and to learn from each other. And I feel very lucky to have, honestly, friends from all over the world.
Fantastic. Thank you. Solange, maybe.
So we go on the same. Well, what is for me satisfying is because of my earlier job on regulatory, say product safety, compliance, and regulatory, quite often the legislation just say you shall comply, and then what the hell does that mean? And the standards are exactly that. If they are well written, they are going to be very to the point to say to the whole the whole industry and the whole world exactly what they need to do. It's a recipe. And that's what I find so powerful about standards, that they really help us to achieve compliance. And also because I'm in the environmental area, greenwashing is something that is really very a big issue. And quite often you want to make the claims of how good you are, but whatever you say, people will more or less complain that you are greenwashing, So, and the standards really help you to overcome that. If you do whatever you do based on standards, you can use the standards as the reason and as the motivator and the justification to whatever you are doing and your accomplishments. So, and of course, like Sonia said, working with standardization people, it's really amazing. And It is because it's not something you do 1 week. You do whatever job you do in a standard is going to take at least 3 years to finish that standard, but it does not go away. It stays there. And it means that you're going to build a relationship, a trustful relationship with the group in a way that for me, really, in some of the groups, really feel like a kind of second family. It's really amazing. There are some groups that are working out there, at least in the environment area, since 2012 and even earlier to before that. So it's 15, 20 years developing standards together. It really feels like family. So this is the biggest motivator, I think, of all.
Nice, thank you. Rachel.
Yes, I will explain it in a simple word. Contribute for a better world and better user-friendly place. When I'm saying that, the standards at the end of the day are aimed to improve our world in a more high quality products with a more secure solutions. In my field of the cybersecurity, for example, many of you are enjoying the iRobot at home. For me, right now, iRobot is a threat because everyone are being very enthusiastic that they can control it from the application, but I know that currently it's not really secured. So, so my goal is to make your life more secured and more safe. So this is the one aspect. The second aspect is regarding standardization. When I'm in the committees, when I'm leading activities, I always look at the wider market. Standards, in some point, are very frightening. No one understands them. The wording, in some cases, when I'm doing training, people told me, we are sorry, but we feel that our English is not so good. I'm telling them, listen, you don't have any problem in English. This is not English. This is a standardization language. And part of the action that I'm taking is leading some of the activities to simplify and to make the standard access to wider group. And another target as a manufacturer. At the end of the day, as a manufacturer, we need to meet different types of standards, especially as a memory company that we serve a very wide market segment. We need to meet all, and part of the goals for me is to make the standards with mutual recognition, to simplify the standardization process in a way that we can meet several standards in one evaluation. So those are the things that excite me, that we achieve them. And I must continue the message that was passed already from Solange and Sonia. This is indeed a community. I'm more than 15 years in this community in different type of working group, but we all together. And we have a very clear target to make the world better. And this is the most exciting thing from my point of view.
So I get it. Yeah, making a difference seems to be really a driving motivator. Sally, now you are helping to enable the same thing for a lot of experts because you are helping, you're supporting technical committees in their work. But you personally, what makes your day in this job?
It is absolutely, as Rachel said, it's making the world better. We're making the world better for people. And for me to have a job doing that, that's the most beautiful thing. But for me, it's also that standards make things more equitable across the world. I really love that. I really love that I can help people raise their voices from countries that don't have as much money, don't have as many resources, don't get the same respect that perhaps the richer countries get, and make sure they are given the same weight as those louder, stronger, more familiar voices. That brings me real pleasure. And that whole making things, like, as Rachel was saying, more accessible, making the language more accessible, making the documents we write easier to understand, that brings me real joy. It's a democratization.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, all of you are participating in committees, in management meetings, and other things. Now, obviously, while it looks like all of you have a job as a hobby, you probably need to bring information back into your organizations also to make them understand what your role is, because you're a what I would terminology I would use would be a standards diplomat. You're somebody who knows how to listen, how to convince, how to get things done, and sometimes also carry forward what your organizations need, and probably need to communicate that back home. How do you do that? What is your secret? How do you get people back home excited about the work that is being done in standardization? Maybe Rachel.
First of all, my involvement in the standardization is not as a hobby. This is part of the objectives of our company. We are developing a secure flash, which means that it's very nice with all the advertising of what we can do, but at the end of the day, without the certificate, it's meaningless. And this is the beauty of meeting standardization. So my goals in the committees is, first of all, to make sure that the objectives of my company are being fulfilled. And so I'm getting a mission to drive the objectives of the company. I can share again. It's a little bit more technical part, but in the cybersecurity domain, for many years, they were focused on the product solution in general. Either it's a TPM, Trusted Platform Module, or a secure element, which for most of, I don't know how we're familiar with this industry, but for example, your ability today for a mobile payment and even before that, the credit card, this is a secure element. So as a memory company, I brought the understanding of the need to secure the storage, which actually practically sound very reasonable, but it wasn't reasonable at that time. That actually, hello, storage is the first one that you need to protect, not the processor and not the crypto algorithm, but what you keep, the user data, your data, this audience data need to be secured. So from my role is direct to the company objectives. So for me, it's simple. It's just to deliver and to contribute and also to raise the market needs based on the discussion that we have in the standardization committees.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? You talk about drive the mission, but there's other people around the table, and I would assume that if they are good in their job as an expert, they also have missions. How do you get heard? How do you get consensus? How do you make sure that at the end of the day, you achieve at least partially what you want?
I'm not, okay. The baseline of my work is the professional technical values that I'm not presenting something that I don't believe in. the beauty queen statement that I said before, to make the world is better, is something that is my initial roots of what values. So when I bring something to the table, it doesn't mean that that this value doesn't align with all the audience. I'm bringing the awareness. I'm bringing the needs that they somehow maybe missed or didn't pay attention to. So at the end of the day, the message, the objective that I bring to the table is I won't bring something that is not aligned with my initial roots and my industry values. So there are no really contradictions. The contradictions and is how to do it and what is required to do. So basically, we are working on in a baseline that we all want to have a good solutions. In my domain is secure solution and also safety solutions.
Okay,
So,
great. Sonia, what do you have to say?
So the way that I like to take information back to my organization, it's through several ways. Certainly talking with the individuals at UL Standards and Engagement who have a similar interest or are involved in the area of focus is useful. The one area, and I know, Gabriella, you and I have talked about this quite a lot over the last few years, but one area where I've been engaged internationally is the area of gender responsive standards. And this has been a very important area at UL Standards and Engagement as well. And while I was working with the IEC ISO Joint Strategic Advisory Group on establishing guidelines for developing gender responsive standards, we also had a similar effort taking place at UL Standards and Engagement. And so the fit was perfect. As we would talk about things, I was able to take the information back, share it with others at UL Standards and Engagement, learn from what they were doing, and in turn take that back. And I think that by working collaboratively in both areas, what we came up with was even stronger than it would have been otherwise. But I'd say for me, that's the big thing, is just trying to engage people within my organization who have a similar interest to the particular area that I'm working on. It's tough though. I mean, there's never enough time. You know, as we prepare for these standards meetings, we have to put so much time into preparing. We go to the meetings, and then it's always tough afterwards to make sure we take the time to close the loop internally. And it has to be intentional, because otherwise it's just very easy to move on to the next topic or the next meeting. And so for me, that's actually a challenge, is being intentional about closing the loop within my organization.
Sally mentioned that when she was applying for the job, she was told, think like a man. Is that still true? Is that a way? Do you have to change how you think? How do you have to behave like a man in a standards committee?
So it's interesting. I have actually changed my approach. I think, as again, I started over 35 years ago. And early on, I tried to blend in. I tried to just be another person on the committee, right? And I think I really was shorting myself, by doing that. I wasn't bringing my full self to the table that way. And I've changed the way I operate, Gabriella, because now it's not about thinking like a man. It's about using my history, my experiences, my knowledge, my connections to do everything I can to bring myself to the table and bring. I think I'm a pretty decent person. I don't want to be someone else. And so I want to bring everything that I've learned to the table. And so that's not that I wouldn't say that's thinking like a man anymore.
Anyone else wants to chime in on this question? Solange, can't hear you. You're muted.
Went wrong. I just ticked another window instead of the mute or unmute. Yeah, well, basically what happens for me as I work for a big company like Philips is that I need to align whatever standard I'm working on, I need to align internally on how important is that standard for the company. So I have a group of people in different pieces, different parts of the business where I'm going to reach out to. In general, what I do beginning of the year is every time to prepare a long list of all the standards that are out there, what's coming as new, what is finishing and all that. And I align also the degree of my attention to each of these standards because there are too many to count. I mean, it's really not possible to participate in everything and to be active in everything. And that's the way I do it. But I think the most difficult thing for me to do is to, and not only for me, but for our department, our whole department working only on standardization, is to convince our bosses the importance of the standardization. Because at the end of the day, we have quite a lot of travel. We have quite a lot of, it's dedicated time. All of us in our group work full-time with standardization, which is very, very special. Very few people have the opportunity to really work full-time on standardization. And what we developed in Philips is what we call track records. So we every time, at least 4 times a year, so at least each quarter, we need to produce one track record, each of us, where we put four basic, it's one PowerPoint slide where we see what part of the business is affected, what is the problem, what that problem, if it's not solved, will happen in terms of extra money, extra resources, extra what to the business. So if we don't do anything, if we are not working with standardization and there comes a standard that covers that problem, so what is the impact for the business? And then we finish with what did we do in our standardization activities to overcome that problem? And I must say that's a language that the managers really understand. It's one page, and we really we say that in Dutch in Yippie taal. It's a it's a cartoon like a very very basic language where no technical standardization language, really something that they really understand, easily understand, and they don't spend a lot of time in that. And it's really very powerful for conveying the message. And also we do, for one of the cases, we do a kind of what we call valuation. We try to put numbers behind. So how much money would cost the business if they would need to do the thing without that specific piece of improvement in the standard against what is the savings they are doing with it. And I think that's the very strong message we have, the way we can convey that message to internally to the business.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, basically real impact and what's in it for me,
Yeah.
me the boss, because they
Yes.
have objectives themselves, of course. What about the question of you have to behave like a man?
Oh, well, that's an interesting thing because I remember when I was getting married, it was our marriage day. We had this boy and little girl bringing the rings, and then he was telling the grandmother that actually my husband should be the mother and I should be the father. And this really expresses, because I have a little bit of a more male behavior, a kind of very assertive, outspoken, not really afraid to ask questions and to make a fuss of myself. Sometimes I ask stupid questions, or I think, sorry, you're going to laugh about it. And then turns out that a lot of people don't understand what is going on. That's not only me. And yeah, I don't really try to be different. I just am what I am, whether people
So
like or not. But it may be, yeah.
seems that is a good way. I mean, Sonia said the same thing. You bring yourself in, and then you have
Exactly.
your own characteristics.
Exactly.
Exactly. I believe, Sally, we haven't heard from you for a while. You were the initiator of Think Like a Man. Do you still? Do you still?
Well,
Or
I
have you
think
ever?
no, not really. You know, I am myself. I can't not be myself, so I'm always going to be that. But I think the advice was more about don't let our social conditioning undersell you. So women are often, you know, raised to be nice, to please people, to be a little quieter, to be polite, to all these other things. So I think that's more what I meant, and what the advice to me was don't let the fact that you don't know everything mean that you don't speak up. Don't let yourself be shut down if you've got something to say. It's more in that sense. It's men are raised to be louder and more confident and more, I don't know, bigger in the world. And often as women, as girls, we're raised to be small. So I think that it's more about that. And I think one of the things that I really enjoy being able to do as a member of ISO and previously at BSI is to encourage women to do that, to speak up, to be themselves, not to apologize for being female, not to apologize for being different to most of the people in the room. That their difference is actually a massive advantage and really helps with what we do. So
Any tips on hurdles that you have faced, a particular hurdle that you have faced in sometimes all male group, an anecdote or a story you can share? Nothing.
no, there are so many, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I've been in groups where I've literally been the only woman in the room, and the very first big ISO standards meeting I went to, there was 300-400 people there, and I would say there was maybe 10 or 15 women out of that group. I mean, it was, you know, it was so obvious. And I was in my 40s when I went to that first meeting and spent the whole week with older men tapping me on the thigh saying, but you're just a child.
Oh,
I
nice.
think, you
So
know,
how did you react? What would be your tip for a newcomer?
well, first of all, move that hand off your leg. That is okay. Do not let people touch you. But it was very much about having the confidence to say, no, actually, I'm not. I have a lot of experience. Just because this is my first meeting does not mean I have not lived a life and I do not know things and I don't have opinions. So I think, you know, one of the biggest things to do is just to speak up. Do not be quiet. Do not allow yourself to be shut down by other people, particularly if you're new in standardization. Don't let somebody say you don't know anything just because you haven't been in their meetings for years. It doesn't mean you haven't got something valuable to contribute. And when fresh eyes come in and actually challenge how something has been done for 10 years, that is often the most innovative thing we can do. And, you know, women have a different perspective often to the majority of the people who have written those documents before or have been involved before. So I'd say speak and don't stop speaking. If somebody interrupts you, say, I'd just like to finish, please, and finish your point. It's very easy to be shut down, I think, when you're in a group full of very experienced people who've been there for a long time and they're very comfortable. So I would say make people uncomfortable. Don't be scared of making people
Good,
uncomfortable.
But perhaps a way to do it, and to do it in my meetings, is to
Oh,
Oh,
you're
you turned
muted.
out. You're muted now suddenly.
yeah, something went wrong. Don't know what. I thought I had unmuted. It's just to ask the opinions of the ladies that are sitting around the table, you know, and by doing that,
Oh, you've gone again.
there is something wrong. I didn't do that. A little bit odd. It's doing by itself. But in general, they become a little bit easier in talking, and so if you kind of stimulate them talking in the beginning, and pushing them to giving the opinions, and sometimes they really have very good opinion, very good understanding of the subject. Quite often it's pretty much technical what we talk about in environment, although yeah, and there is quite a lot to bring to the table in that sense, and that's a way to do it as well. So just as
So
in
you
our
would say
positions,
so you would
in
say
our
the
position
chair
of
has a big
conveners,
role.
yes, the
Yes,
chair has the power to do that, and we
yes,
should do that. Yeah,
yeah,
we
yeah.
really should stimulate more the
Mm.
the other ladies to become more active.
So that's a big message for all the chairs, men or women.
Men or women,
Men
absolutely.
or
Yeah.
women, okay.
Yeah.
Rachel,
And
you wanted to
Yeah.
add something.
To add a few things, because I
Yeah.
think that tips are the most important messages that I'm interested in this session. The first thing to all the audience, remember, women is not an issue. And this is something that even though this is the session, women not an issue. Just remember that you are in those committees, that you are joining this community because of your expertise and because of your experience, and that no one will let you forget it. Secondly, as one of that leading and contribute to different kind of regulation committees, I do expect to see more contributors and more women leaders. So if you are interested to do it, strive to it. Volunteer to do writing activities and review. And listen, the industry, even though it looks like a big community, there are very few contributors. So be one of them. Another thing that is important for me, innovate. We have our own way to look at things. We know how to improve things. So innovate, suggest new ideas, methods. Again, as a leader, it is always been appreciated. And for the most important question, either to be a man or a woman, for sure, the message here was clear. Be yourself. And as a woman, I always say, use your EQ. Your EQ is valuable. Is valuable in having a collaboration and in get a more friendly way of messaging. The energy that women bring, in contrary to the alpha man vibe, is changing the atmosphere totally. So be yourself, and don't forget that your values are more than the disadvantage that might be interpreted as a woman. And I would like to finish this with one anecdote from my experience. At some point, my experience with a customer. At some point, my customer claimed that something was done differently, and I said, no, this is the way, and said, no, we received that, and I said, no, you receive exactly what you had to receive. Check with your team and get back to me. So he came back to me and he said, you are right. I replied to him, I'm a woman.
Woman power. Okay. And you've led us into sort of conclusive statements from each of you I would like you to share your individual tips and insights. I think, thank you, Rachel, you've done that. And maybe we can go through the list. Sonia, do you want to start?
Yeah,
Anything
great.
that hasn't been covered yet, any
I
sort
know.
of like nugget that you would like a new coming man or woman, doesn't really matter, to know.
Sure. Yeah, and so much has been covered. I'm learning a lot from my colleagues here. I'd say two things I haven't heard yet. One is about what your brand is. And this is something I think about. It's so hard to build a positive reputation, right? And I think that's something that we control is how do people see us. And I say that because if I say I'm going to do something, I want to do it. I want people to know they can count on me and rely on me. And that, that's not because I'm a woman or, a man or woman. I think that should apply to everyone. But I think sometimes we may have to try even harder to prove ourselves. And the other tip I would share is actually something it's a piece of advice I gave my children when they went to college. I had a son, I have a son and a daughter. I gave them both the same advice, which is to find your community. Find a group of people. You can't just walk into a campus of 25,000 people and feel comfortable. You can't walk into an IEC meeting or ISO meeting of 300 people and feel comfortable. You sometimes have to find who your smaller network is. And there's such value in having people that you can count on and they can count on you. You can bounce ideas off of each other. And I'm not talking about just a network of women. I'm talking about a network of people you can trust. And I think that's so important is to build that foundational group of people within that technical committee that you can talk to, you can count on, you can get a straight answer from them, and you can have the opportunity to influence behind the scenes.
So I gather there is stuff that's being discussed at the table, and then if you have a network, you can also make things advance in more informal settings around the discussions.
That's exactly right. The meetings themselves is one thing. The coffee conversations, the conversations over dinner is completely different.
Right. I've seen that also. It feels to me sometimes talking to experts that say like we both speak English. It doesn't mean that we understand each other, but when you overcome that cultural hurdle, you suddenly understand that the Japanese may say yes, but that doesn't mean yes. And that sometimes the attitude is the same, but you're not able to express it. So if you have these informal meetings, I guess you can start to understand the other person as a person.
That's right. It's much easier to understand where they're coming from. And it's
Yes.
easier sometimes to get your own message across.
Yeah, exactly. Solange, what about you?
Well, I was more or less going in the same direction. I think if we look now into the whole online meeting post-COVID, where the bosses are pushing for more online meetings because they are cheaper, because they are less demanding, but there is really all that is not good for building consensus. It's not good to understand and to build trust with your colleagues that you are, and 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 um, and you need that because, like you said, quite often you don't decide things during the meeting. You decide them between the meetings or after the meetings at the dinner when you're drinking a beer or whatever you're drinking. Yeah. And then people are relaxed and then they can let loose what is the thing that really bothers them, because everybody has a reasoning, but they maybe feel that they should not talk about that during the meeting because and those things become a lot easier when you have those moments to share with each other in a more relaxed way. And quite often, I think the most difficult consensus issues we had were solved at the dinner table, not at the meeting table, really. And I think at the same thing, I want to say having these meetings is really exciting. It's technical. It's all that. But sometimes it becomes a lot of a tea drinking. You get a lot of people sitting there and talking. And I'm the type of pretty much action driven. It's just in me. But I think that also helps that at the end of the day, okay, we talked a lot, What do you conclude? What we are going to do from here? What is the thing that we achieved today? And what is the action? So I think that helps as well. And I think that's my takeout. It's not only for women, it's for anyone doing standardization. But I guess it helps women because they are organized, because they are structured. It's just in the hand of women to do like that. So make use of your strengths when being in these meetings. That's my message.
Thank you, Solange. Sally, last but not least, you have an important role together with the chair to facilitate these meetings. And I'm sure you've had a lot of newcomers, both men and women. What were your tips for these people to be able to integrate well into an expert committee, to be heard, to really influence?
Well, it's a mixture of what everybody else has said to a degree. Rachel said volunteer, absolutely volunteer, take on some roles. And then you can actually highlight yourself and demonstrate your competence and that you are reliable and that you are a useful member of that community. That builds relationships so quickly if you're in charge of doing something and you're running it. And so few people volunteer. It's hard getting people to volunteer. So it's an excellent way in. And build alliances, not just people you like. Get to know the people you don't like. Get to know the people who you really disagree with. Sit down with them and talk to them and listen to them. And often you'll flip it around over time. I think that's really important. And I also think that as women who have a role, if there are women in the group you're going into, make friends with them and support each other and support other people who are not given the respect necessarily or the voice that they demand. Younger people are often not treated with enough respect. They're not given the due that they deserve. People from developing countries, it's often the same thing. Forge alliances, work together. We're always stronger together. And we can do this even in a Zoom world when we don't get to have as many physical meetings. Pick up the phone and talk to people. Ask if you can have a one-on-one Zoom call and build personal relationships. Then you'll be heard. And I think that's one of the most important things to say is build those relationships with people you like and you don't like, your allies and your enemies, and try and bring them closer together so that you can use your emotional intelligence, your EQ, to really drive things forward.
Well, thank you. I think this was a very enriching panel. Thank you very much. I think a lot of the tips you gave are valuable, not just for women who want to participate in expert groups. I think they're equally valid for men. And maybe in today's really crazy geopolitical situation, they would be well remembered by many more people. Together, you can go further than maybe if you go alone, because alone you go fast, but together you go much further. Thank you all for participating. I think our hour is basically up. And
Gabriella, we have one question in the
we have,
Q&A.
I saw the question, I thought, and that's why I didn't go further into it, because the question is, how can we encourage more women to join us working in standardization? I think that a lot of the things that were said should incite women to understand that they have an important role to play, that their participation is valuable for the outcome, for the standards that are being developed, and that I hope with the tips and insights that you provided, there are at least a few women who will now understand that they have the power and they have the means to actually get heard. So that's my reason why I didn't go. I thought that you all answered this in a certain way. And thank you anyway. And thank you all. Have a great weekend, a great afternoon. You can all change into casual back.
Take off the jacket.
And Sonia, have a good day. You have a few hours of work ahead of you still. I
Yes,
think we
I've
are
got more
closer
coffee.
to the end.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. Thank you, Ifan, for putting this on. So nice talking to everyone.
All said. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everyone, great.
Bye.